Locals going. Just Steve, are you on a Mac?
I'm on a Mac.
Okay, just QuickTime, and then new audio recording. File, new audio recording, and then select your microphone. There's like a caret next to the red button. Select your mic,
Yep.
and then hit record. Just let it run. That's a backup. We probably won't need it.
Got
But
it. It's
we
going.
have had, we don't, we have like 3 nines of reliability with Riverside, but not 6 nines. I don't know how many nines there are, but we've had a failure, so we do backups just in case.
You guys have more nines than Valtown does.
Probably. But they are probably making more money than Valtown is as well to be able to back up those nines at this point. Riverside is at this point pretty popular tool.
Yeah. You just prompted like a question, which I'll ask. I just want to. No, I'm not going to ask it. Yeah, it's fine. I'll ask it on air. I was going to just give you a preview, but like, it's fine.
Don't preview. No
I won't preview. Yeah,
You want to get them on the spot. You know?
I know, right?
Right. Just kidding. I'm trying to make you nervous.
Hard-hitting journalism.
Yes.
Journalism, right here.
I've written these questions down here. You're gonna hate this one.
Ooh.
That's how the pros used to do it. They read them off an index card. Next question.
I just got an email from New York today. She was like,
Ooh.
"Can I call you Steve or Stevie?" You know.
Stevie.
Anyways. Yeah.
She's trying.
More personal context, and that was about. But she's like, but in the New York Times, they have like an editorial thing where they refer to you by your name you're more commonly known by. So she was like, I have to refer to you by Steve. I was like, that's fine.
But we get to call you Stevie. Is that what you're saying?
You want us to call you Stevie on the show?
This is a podcast called JS Party.
All right.
We don't have a you know, what do you call it?
Steve is good. Steve is good for like work contexts.
Sure. All right, let me throw out then, if anybody has any questions, concerns, bathroom breaks, anything like that, we can just go ahead and start the show. That way we can talk on air, not off air.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I did put the message out to our channel. Hello out there on the internet. We're just about to start.
Hello, internet.
Where's my intro song? There it is. Hello to the internet, to all of our awesome JS Party listeners. I am your friend Jerod, and I am joined today by my friend Amal. What is going on, Amal?
Hi everyone. So excited about today's show. I think I say that every time, but still very excited.
You do. You're keeping the streak alive. I'm waiting for the moment when we come out and you're like, I just don't want to be here, and I am not excited, and I can't wait for the show to be over. I mean, that'll be a day. I'm excited too because we're here to take you not to Funky Town, but to Valtown, and we're joined by Val creator Steve. His friends call him Stevie. We're gonna call him Steve for the first half of the show, and hopefully we'll get to Stevie by the end. What's up, Steve? Welcome.
Thanks. I'm doing well. We'll see how it goes. Stevie's for my close friends, but
okay,
maybe we'll see.
We'll set up some kind of a code word or something that you can say to to consent to the Stevie, and then we'll switch when we hear it. But for now, Steve, welcome. Valtown, gosh, it looks like a really cool thing. It's one of these ideas where I just landed on the website and it just immediately connected with me, so much so that I covered it in our Changelog News podcast and newsletter. Because right when you land, it says, if GitHub gists could run and AWS Lambda were fun. And I just realized after saying it aloud, it also rhymes. So bonus points for having a good tagline that rhymes. And as we all know, if something rhymes, it has to be true. I've heard that somewhere once. So this connected with me.
Oh, hold on. I think I've been saying your tagline wrong because in my head I've been reading it as, and if AWS Lambdas were fun. Can we settle it here? Is lambda already plural or like,
Oh,
because yeah, there is no S here.
that's true.
Yeah, I think about it without an S. But yeah, you're right. We make gists plural.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
So
point.
that lambda's
Good,
gonna
good
get an
copy
S.
editing.
Okay,
Possibly.
excellent. Yay.
Oh,
All right.
well, there we go. We already fixed something. A controversy here is it lambda or lambdas?
I know.
Most of mine are don't because I was so annoyed by the platform. When I tried it, this was early days, that I just kind of went back to my old school way of doing things. And yet here we are with a great concept. So share it, Steve. The overall concept, of course, we did the tagline. But why don't you give it more words, flesh it out, what you're trying to do with Valtown?
Yeah. So Valtown is a social where you can write, run, deploy, share, schedule code. And we try to make simple things easy and more complicated things possible. And we're starting with use cases that are around maybe integrations, prototypes of APIs, and we want to make that really good and fun and quick to do. But the dream, the long-term dream, is to scale up to be a full back-end kind of replacement. But we hope to get there over time.
Where did this idea come from?
Well, I guess pieces of this idea I've been working on for years. I've been a big developer tools fan but this company really was instigated by this investor that I became friendly with. He is dev tools companies, and I just worked on a dev tools project that was trying to be a company, but it didn't work out, and I was asking him for it. He had one. Yeah, his original pitch for Valtown was, isn't it sad that there's dead code on the internet? Just like code, just syntax highlighted code, just like in a blog, in API documentation, on Stack Overflow, and it just doesn't run like somewhere, and then you have to install stuff. It's just like the loss of composability because there's dead. It's a bigger tragedy than you might think. At least that's what we believe.
Why so tragic? What's such a tragedy about it? Copy paste is easy.
Well, so where you, there are like I think in terms of like a recent example of this, maybe like these kind of memes of like someone texting their developer friend like, oh, like ChatGPT is writing me all this code, your job is done, and then like a couple text them, but wait, where do I put this code?
Right.
So I think like particularly for beginner programmers, like where do you put the code? How do you get your development environment set up? Like a lot of the questions that Replit solves really well, or even Code Sandbox or JS Fiddle, that also is kind of going at that slice of the problem. Like just like load a URL and then you're going. You know.
Right.
Figure out the environment as well as the code.
Yeah, I appreciate that analogy a lot. Quote on your website from someone who was complimenting Valtown that said, it's a practical middle option for not going too enterprisey, in quotes, Lambda, or too consumer, in parentheses, Zapier, right? Or Zapier. I've never been able to, I don't know what the,
I don't know.
yeah,
either.
this is another like
Pick one and
Babel, like yeah, so many debates on this. But can you, I love that analogy of like something in between AWS Lambda and Zapier. So could you kind of just like walk us through the landscape of like what like core problems Valtown sets out to create, like solve, besides just code execution, which you said that like you can do on Sandbox, Code Sandbox or Replit.
Yeah. So Valtown, it's server-side compute. So like some people like to think of us as like CodePen for the backend or JS Fiddle for the backend. So in that way, we're a lot like Replit, but we're a lot smaller, more composable snippets. So in that way, like Twitter has been a big inspiration for us. Like each val is like a thing, and then they compose up really well in the same way that you would make a tweet thread. Instead of one big tweet, it's like a tweet thread, and then each tweet can be individually liked and retweeted. So vals can all be individually versioned, referenced, imported, commented on. You know, we just added comments. You can comment vals. But anyways, so in terms of that landscape of, like, on the one hand, you have AWS Lambda, which is totally really hard to use. And on the other hand, you have Zapier, which is just no code. Valtown really, sits in the middle in this weird way for programmers. If you're a programmer and your natural way of thinking about automation is in code, I think is designed for you. A couple of years ago, like before this, company, like I tweeted about, tweets are cool, they have timestamps. I tweeted, like, wouldn't it be cool if there was something like Zapier, but it felt more like a programming language? And I think at the time, the thing I was getting all of your keys, like, value in Zapier is that you, like, press a button and you can OAuth flow, like, authorize your Gmail account, and you can, like, send emails from your Zapier, or just any service. You can just press a button and then the keys are injected into Zapier, and now you can do more things with that. So at the time I was focused on that, and we have vague notions of that in Valtown. We haven't built it yet. It just, like, hasn't been the bottleneck, it seems. If you're someone who's writing code anyways, like, clicking a couple buttons, like copy a developer token into your app, into your Valtown keys. The main thing that Valtown is good at is bringing everything to your fingertips. At least that's how some of our users describe it, and I like to think about it. Like, you can write a bunch of utility functions for yourself. Other Valtown users are writing utility functions, and then whenever you want to do a thing, like, the first thing you should do is kind of search and see if someone else in Valtown has already done that thing. Like Discord, like, I was playing with the Discord API today, and so, like, instead of, like, parsing through the documentation, I just searched for the word Discord, and, like, someone else had already made that API call that I wanted to do, and I could just, so Valtown is that, like, I can use that code and I can be sure that it's going to work because it already has worked in the Valtown environment. That's, like, the magic of everyone shares the same runtime.
Right. Yeah. And, like, you just said, like, a really important keyword there, which is, I think that's, like, the secret sauce to all this, right? Is being able to actually have a controlled environment and execution context. And so, unlike kind of client side things that are limited to just client side, like Code Sandbox or old school JS Fiddle or whatever, right? These are kind of just running in the browser. You're able to kind of leverage storage of, like, variables, and, like, you can kind of keep state, like, kind of, you can also carry state throughout different executions. And so can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Persistence is definitely something that we are good at. We're regretting some of the choices we made, and we're looking to a little. Anyways, I'll tell you what it looks like now. So what it looks like now is Valtown. From one val, you can reference another val state. So the way that works is, if I'm in a val and I have another val bar, I could just do @ and then the username, like Steve Krouse is my username, or @me to just reference my own username. Then it would reference bar. So the idea there is imports as easy as tagging on Twitter. But then if you wanted to update bar, just update the variable from foo, and the update will just persist to bar. So you could do @me.bar++, and if it was a number, it'll be bigger than it was before. And vals all have independent version history, so it just puts a new version of bar with, that's a number.
One thing there, Steve, was that it's more about where you run it, because we have all this code. When we talk about the copy paste thing and the dead code on the internet, and I think that's really powerful, not just for beginners, because I definitely think that mindset. I used to teach, coding bootcamp style web development 101. And getting people set up and running and, like, in troubleshooting environments was such a time suck for that. And that was full stack. It wasn't merely in the browser front end. So Valtown and other options like it are just a boon for teaching people and getting people started. Most of them, like we've been talking about, are front end oriented, whereas this is more of a full stack serverless option. And where is really cool, because on the website, you have some use cases, like right there on the homepage, that even though it's great for beginners, actually speak to longtime developers as well. because there's certain things that we have to do, and it's easy to code those things up, but then like the question is always like, well, where is this going to run? You know? And we all have our solutions. Like, well, maybe it is on Lambda because I already am an AWS expert and I can just get that thing going. Maybe I have a VPS that runs Linux and I put all my random crap on there. Maybe I have a few strewn about, you know, home network, home lab, like all these places. I have some cron jobs that run on my laptop. It's not a server, but it runs most of the time. And so I just cron job on my laptop and I let it run things. But then we ask ourselves, like, well, how do I email myself? You know, what's the easiest way to get myself a notification? And I've been doing this lately, you know, looking at like, well, how do I push notify myself reliably from anywhere in the world on a script, right? Just like pipe it into something that sends it to a thing versus me having to do a bunch of other things to get something done. Just like simply set up something small that scratches a particular itch. And you have cron jobs, you have email yourself, so you have scheduled, you have notifications built in. And for me as an experienced developer, even when I think about where, it's just like, well, you just throw it on Valtown. I have an account there, throw it on Valtown and let it email me. Schedule it with cron. And so I like that that focus is there from the beginning, where it seems attractive not just to people trying to get started, but also people just sick of like having to manage where their code runs all the time. So I have a bunch of stuff that I could easily port, being it's JavaScript and TypeScript. I could just, you know, create a Valtown account and start moving stuff up there and not worry about did that cron tab run because my laptop is closed.
Yeah, exactly. We that's, I think the early vision is slurp up all the things you have scattered on random DigitalOcean droplets or servers you've been managing yourself, and for you and in a more centralized place. And then I think but the long-term thing is all the people and use that don't get built because it's just too cumbersome to like set that up, and they don't already have a running server that runs their cron jobs. So like, or like they're not on their laptops if they can't set it up. Like, you know, so many of the valves on your phone in bed, or just like, you know,
You
on the
code
train
on your phone in bed?
Oh yeah, that's
Oh,
my
boy.
first hour of work.
Let's
was,
stop here and enjoy
On your
for a
phone?
moment.
Wow.
Yeah. So a user I saw on Discord was having trouble getting. Well, so okay, so we just released a new version of the Valtown API that lets you search vals, do more things you'd want to do with Valtown from the API. And so they piped our OpenAPI spec generator of an API client with like all the TypeScript types and everything, and they have it on GitHub. And you can actually import GitHub package, GitHub client or whatever, GitHub code right from GitHub. Like you don't have to publish it to NPM before you can use it in Valtown because we use like, you know, through like ports. So anyway, I was showing them how to do it all from my phone. I don't know, it took 20 minutes. And at the end of it, you know, I just copied the link to the val, and they were off forking it and playing with it themselves.
Wow. So, and just to be clear, this is like you were showing them how to import like code that's publicly available on GitHub and like use that code in your val. Okay. Oh, their code.
Yeah. So they made a package that has like, that's like an API client for Valtown that they were going to use fast extension for Valtown. Oh, well, it'd be awesome to use this within Valtown to like interact with the Valtown API from within Valtown. And I could tell, because, well, so like a reason why that's going to be cool is there's no way, so like there are a lot of events on Valtown out, like if your val threw an error when it ran at any time, like it ran via the API, ran via cron job and it threw an error, or someone liked your val, or someone referenced your val. Like there are all sorts of things you want to get notified about. And so our current plan, it sounds maybe a little pie in the sky, and it might be, but our current plan is to build all of those notifications in user space. So there'll just be a val that I write for myself that will pull for all these resources that I might care to be notified about. It'll send me an email via console.email, like you were talking about. Valtown makes it so easy to email yourself. And so any be like a bit of a marketplace on Valtown of these like custom notification filtering, throttling functions. You know, it's all fully programmatic and customizable. Anyways, it's an experimental idea that we're excited about.
Yeah.
Get the API client running on Valtown from GitHub.
Right. So at the end of this little snippet that you put from your phone, did you have a comment that said like "sent from my phone"? You know, like in your SIG. Did you put that in your SIG?
Nice. Yeah.
Remember that?
Please, please disregard any typos. Sent from my phone.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you're on Valtown on your phone and you hit run, we could save. Like this val was run from a phone.
It's kind of like the old, the old Twitter, client metadata where it's like from Tweetbot or from, back in the good old days.
Right.
That would be cool.
I feel like I need that line, but for anything I type which I haven't reread, be like, I have not reread this, so if this sounds weird, like just
if this
FYI.
executes improperly, was not TDD'd. Just a disclaimer.
Right.
I did not test this.
That's funny.
That's cool. Well, it's okay. So for coding from your phone, coding from as a beginner or a person who is sick of managing things, the where is really important. But the question that comes to my mind when I look at a platform like this, which looks nice and free, it has a pro plan and blah blah blah, is like, well, where is my code then? Where is Valtown? What's the address? What's the geo coordinates of Valtown? Where does my code actually go?
Ohio. It goes to Ohio.
Ohio. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we everything right now is deployed on Render in their Ohio region.
Oh, so you weren't kidding?
He was kidding and serious at the same time.
Like, whoa,
the best
okay.
kind of
Yeah.
Did you pick Ohio because it's like middle country?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it seemed like the middle of America seemed solid. We do have a lot of users like in China. We hate our latency times, but Valtown, most of Valtown can really scale horizontally and go to the edge. When we have enough money to hire a team to do the whole edge thing. We're trying to architect with that in mind. But for now, Ohio is fine.
Ohio. Is it just stored in a database, like as a string or a text area, or like get into some of the architecture? Where actually
sure.
is it in Ohio?
I guess starting from the furthest, the bottom of the back end, everything's stored in a Postgres database. Your code for your vals, your output for your vals. And this is why we recently added like a 100 kilobyte limit to what 250 kilobytes for the pro plan, because we just like can't be abusing Postgres with more than that. But we'll probably soon move to like an R2 blob storage for like all the things that should be stored in R2. Then I guess one step above that would be like our execution environment is Dino, and we manage our own Dino servers that execute user code in a sandboxed, isolated kind of way. We would kind of love to use like Cloudflare workers or really any of them. We don't want to we would love to not have to manage a functions as a service platform. The reason is that we have this weird requirement where Valtown is as much a deployment platform as it is a IDE. If you hit run or hit save, your val needs to run as fast as it would in a deployed, like your val needs to run and that's what you'd expect from like an IDE. But in deployed, but most of these functions as service platforms have like a couple of to like deploy your code, because they're not focused on like someone doing rapid iteration. They're focused on like you've deployed it and now it's going to run for forever. So anyways, maybe one of the service platforms is listening to this and will consider taking pity on us and making a better latency deployment thing. But in the meantime, our deployments ourselves on Dino. And then in the middle, we have an API server that's just a node server. And then at the front end, it's React server. And all four of those services are hosted on Render.
Okay.
Interesting. I'm just curious, like, why are these, like, why are they specifically like I'm going to run it locally versus like deploying it, right? I'm just curious why those two things are coupled at all. Like
Oh,
when you hit save, can you just can there be a save as draft versus like save and deploy?
Like when you're developing in Valtown, normally you're like, so you could be like writing a function, which is just saving a function, which can happen pretty quickly. Like running arbitrary JavaScript to like test out the functions you've written. That's a thing you would do on Valtown that most functions as a Surface platforms don't have. You know,
I see.
when you're like testing out your Lambda function, you're not testing out your Lambda function from another. You use Postman or something like that.
Right.
On Valtown, you're like, you have like Valtown's a bit of a REPL environment, and so we need that code to deploy instantly because it's a REPL.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So kind of like just like maybe the architecture of a val. So like what languages can you use to write these code snippets? And you know, what, like, I'm curious also, do you plan to support different types of runtimes in the future?
Yeah. So for the medium term, it's just going to be JavaScript and a version of Dino. Term, we might allow different JavaScript runtimes, like different versions of Dino, or different, or maybe Node or Bun, like different JavaScript runtimes, and you could specify that. And then in the longer term, we might allow other programming languages. But for now, benefits of having everything in that lingua franca environment that we were talking about, those benefits are so great that we want to keep that for as long. And like, I guess, to be honest, it's just so much less of a developer complexity for us to maintain.
Yeah.
The one environment. So we're gonna stick with that for a long time.
Yeah, JavaScript is the universal solvent, so you know, I get that. Good choice. And so, you know, I think one of the things that really got me excited about this was like seeing that one of the vals available was like, do you have a form that you need to add to your website? Like, can you talk us through like how that works, and just like, you know, being able to kind of leverage a val to like take data that someone's typing onto your static site and then, you know, having that go somewhere. So.
Yeah, Valtown's a really great pairing for like a static site like Astro or site generators. So you can do the whole thing 100% on Valtown. So Valtown server-side compute, but you can server, and now we're doing front-endy things. So I think the way the Astro like button, there was a blog post someone wrote, I think the way he did it, just had one route that, like a kind of a basic get route. He made a val that was an express handler val. There are a couple different types of vals. You can just write a function, just a JavaScript function, or you can write an Express.js handler that takes a request object and a response object and, you know, returns a response. So if it's a GET request, he'll return like a like button component, likes, just as an HTML string that he'll construct in the val. And if it's a post request that's hitting this Express handler, then he'll, like, you know, add 1 to the count, like we were talking about before, because you can persist data in. And that's it. It's really just like 6 lines, you know, or the core concepts are just, you know, 6 lines. You can do more complicated things. I think he was doing like to make sure that you can only hit the like button a certain number of times, because, you know, it'll like try and fingerprint your browser.
So
that's pretty cool.
Where's the BTC miner val? That's my question. Fork that, run that. That's funny. We haven't seen any of you. A couple of people try. Just wait.
Like, I know. It'll happen. Hopefully, it'll happen when, like, have the resources to deal with it. That would be nice, you know.
Totally.
Just like we should put a notice up on our website. Just wait until we raise our next round of funding before you.
We'll really be able to support this operation when we have more money. Any public platform deals with abuse, and if you haven't yet, success will just bring that. And so, yeah, hopefully it aligns with a time when you're fleshed out as a business enough to be able to deal with it as it comes up, because it certainly will. I can't remember who we were talking to most recently about that on the show, but we were talking about even GitHub's actions and how much GitHub Actions is actually just like they're fighting it off constantly. And it's just like, well, whenever you provide free public compute at any scale, they'll scale it horizontally across your free plans in order to to get it done. But in the good days right now, you don't have to. Thankfully, you don't have to worry about it right now, and hopefully, they won't find you for a long time.
Yeah.
You mentioned Dan Levine from Excel as being kind of the Kickstarter to this idea, and you building it. I also was looking at your list of people involved, the team, and I noticed Ross Butcher or Boucher, I'm not sure how his last name is pronounced, as an advisor. And Ross, I remember Ross from way back in the cappuccino days. I'm actually a cappuccino user from like the aughts. So I was a big 280 North fan from Francisco Tomalski, Ross, and the third founder. I'm gapping it now. I've had him on the changelog, so I apologize for gapping that. But yeah, Ross immediately, I was like, that name sounds familiar. He's also doing RunKit, right? So RunKit's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know much about RunKit. I know it's popular amongst some, and he's an advisor. So it seems like RunKit and Valtown have a lot of crossovers. Has he been instrumental in the design? And like he probably knows how to do a lot of these things, maybe even fighting fraud and abuse.
Yeah. So yeah, RunKit was one of the main inspirations of Valtown, I would say. RunKit's a really cool platform. It's still embedded in NPM, so if you want to like try any NPM package out, that RunKit is just right there embedded, which is awesome. And also is like at least partially responsible for the early API and making beloved by everybody. He's
talented guy.
He's really wonderful at building developer products. And chat with him all the time and get his advice on things. Dan introduced us, and he became friends. Actually, Dan's wife Christina was very early at Stripe, so that's probably how they all got to know each other.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like you have some smart people behind what you're up to, which is always a vote of confidence. Let's talk about the business side of things, because anytime you're going to adopt any sort of platform, you're thinking, will this exist in 3 years?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if I'm going to put my code there. Now, thankfully, it's probably relatively portable as long as I have small functions and they're vanilla JS or TS for the most part. Obviously, there'll be some Val-specific APIs that I'm calling in there, but probably portable as just the risk assessment from an adopter standpoint. But what about from a business standpoint? Like I mentioned, there's a pricing plan. Yep. What's the business going to look like? Where does the pricing plan come in? When do I start paying as a user? And then how are you going to actually keep Valtown around and not have to close down the town, not turn it into a ghost town?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, I first want to address the point about like developer lock-in and risk.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely first to risk comes to adopting new technologies. So I got an email from someone who was trying to get me to be the first customer of their developer tool, and I was like, no, I want to be the first customer. And he was like, isn't that a little
hypocritical?
Yeah, like isn't Valtown like a new developer tool? Like, how do you expect people to adopt it? And like my answer is like that's why we're so specifically going after hobbyists and amateurs right now. Like there are businesses, or maybe a bunch of businesses, who are using Valtown, but like they know they're bringing their like fun hobby thing to work, and they're expecting more than that because of how we're doing the branding, and sooner rather than later, I think it'll become a mature platform, and anyways, it'll be more obvious that you'll want to use it at work. But anyways, we're trying to slow roll that for this very reason. If you're only using it for things that you don't care about too much to begin with, like we were saying before, the are the things that wouldn't have gotten built before because they were just too hard to get built. Now will actually exist in the world because they're so easy. You can just do them on your phone as a hobby thing. So when to start and like build trust over time. Lock-in. There's 8 or 12 Valtown specific things that you'll replace if you want your code to run without like changing any of the code. And we are working on knocking each of those down one by one so that Valtown is like fully a web standard compliant platform. And really there's just like 1 or 2 or 0 of these things to get your Valtown code to run anywhere that JavaScript runs, Node, Dino, Bun, what. Well, not anywhere. Like, I don't know if you can get it running on like every different deployed runtime, but I need these platforms with very minimal tweaking. So that's like an ongoing project.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, you've got some like domain specific things that are like you mentioned these are APIs that are specific, invisible, because obviously it's like all in the execution context. So like preloaded, so things just work if I type at blah blah blah, right? But I think a potential out for you all could be also just giving people like access to the, I don't know, polyfills or whatever, right? So maybe it's like an export out of Valtown where it's like here, like in Valtown it's 50 lines. Valtown's maybe it's 120 or something, right? Like, but you can give people like an out that way, so you don't have to pollute the API for like the use case that you're not as invested in, right? So just some free advice.
Yeah. That might be. I think that's media plan. Where we're heading is.
It gets harder and harder the more you guys do.
Is that we just want. We think that web standards are just the answer. So like you were referencing, like it's so great, but it's like a little bit too much magic, and then it's our own thing, and it's like really complicated. And so the current plan is that in the future you'll type at stevekrouse.foo like you normally do now, but then when you like go to accept this completion, it doesn't actually that way. It'll just complete to foo, and we'll add at the top of your file an import foo from, and then in quote vt/.
Yeah.
And so we'll get the best of both. Import store will be totally web standard. You can copy and paste that code. It'll work everywhere. There's no @ symbol anymore, which is an invalid JavaScript identifier. But in terms of the developer experience, it'll be just as fluid as it was before.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll be the best of both. And but we're actually using your idea of like a polyfill kind of transpilation method. It will be like the halfway house. So like old style Valtown code will work style code through transpilation. So it hopefully it'll just take a couple of months to work these non-web standard decisions that I made a year ago that I want to unwind.
And thank you so much for sharing that insight and your thought process and the kind of where you are on the decision tree. I think it's one of the things when you're designing an API for public consumption, it's every decision, like small or big, like you're kind of stuck with it once it's out into in the universe, and it's really hard. And so I would advise you, like, don't feel rushed to make this decision. Like, take your time. Like, it's because once you release it, it's out there. So just, don't let the community pressure you into having an answer for that right away. But I will say there's kind of two halves of this, right? There's actually getting your code or your quote unquote val, right, to run. But there's also data, right? So to use your example from earlier, so Astro has a like button that they've kind of got hooked up and working through a val. And so those like counts, I would want to kind of be able to export that, right? So I'd want to know, like, hey, at what point when was the last time that this was working, right? So let's say you went down, I'd be like, did I just lose like 3 days worth of data? If I wanted to move it to a different service, like, so are you letting people just export their data? Is there somewhere they can query and get that JSON, or are you going to use R2 for that, like Cloudflare's R2? Like, I'm just curious, like, what's the plan there?
Yeah. So similarly, we want to move away from like our magic persistence to a straight store that will be replaceable by like any key value store.
Got it.
We're fine with that API because there's no like web standard key value store really. Like, do we just use Redis? That's really like complicated. Do we do something very simple? Thinking through what that API will be, but we want it to be so simple that you can choose your own. Like you can, while you're still using Valtown, swap out your data store for something else, or if Valtown goes away, you can use whatever you in to any Valtown magic with the key value store.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, val persistence is just another val. That's like kind of the idea behind the name Valtown. Like everything in Valtown's a val. Like functions are vals, express handlers are vals, JSON data is a val. Like they're all values. Because JavaScript has first class functions, first class data. Yeah. So so it's easy to get stuff out, get stuff in.
Nice.
But
that's cool.
Well, I'm not going to tell you to reuse the local storage API. I certainly wouldn't do that.
Yeah. You know, like it's nice to have something.
And then you looked at it,
this
you're
is
like,
a web standard.
Yeah, but it's a dying one.
Yeah.
But like on the flip side of that, like IndexedDB is not exactly a great API either, right? Like there's entire libraries created to just say like this is really painful to work with, you know. So anyways, you kind of ask you about like what is the name, like what is in that name, val, right? Like, and it's so funny, once upon a time baby Amal used to like all her functions would like I would use the variable name retval, like RTEVAL, like for like return value. You know, that was my like go-to name for like if I needed to just like come up with something exactly on the spot. I'm like retval, you know. So that was it. So
data, you know, var equals data.
Data.
I'm like, this is the data that we're dealing with here. That's pretty precise, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that. Super precise. Cool. So val, and so can we talk about the community aspect here, right? So there's this whole sharing is caring kind of mantra in Valtown, where like you said, like you want the first thing anyone does, you know, before they create a val is to make sure that there isn't one that already exists that does the thing that they want. And so can you talk a little bit about the kind of just what that journey has been like for you, kind of creating kind of a town square for vals, right? Because, you know, how the discoverability of it and that whole thing, and like, yeah, what's that been like, and how, like, I'm sure there's a lot of organic elements, but I'm just curious, like for the stuff that isn't organic, like how does your team help put that together?
Yeah. Let's see. Community happens in Discord, which, but I did make the Discord. This is my second like developer community. The first one was which started out as a podcast that I made just to talk about developer tooly kind of things, and then a Slack community kind of sprung up around my podcast, which was very fun, and that's still going on without me. This Discord community is going well. How many people are in it now? I think whenever you message everyone in Discord, it just says this will message over 500 people. So they're over 500.
Nice.
It's pretty chatty. 5 people who are like kind of in there every day, asking questions, coming up with ideas. Those are my friends. I didn't know them before now, but I like them a lot. It's fun to have some really passionate users, always pushing the edges of things. And there's a lot that happens in Discord that I would like over time to push into the product. So like we added comments on every val, so anyone can comment on a val. That's you know, the behavior now is you make a cool val, you copy and paste it into the Discord, and then people will comment push that into the platform. You can like vals, and we have a trending filter, so you can like just browse trending vals like a front page of Valtown, but it's a little bit buried, and there are sometimes interesting things there. But
so you guys don't have like I'm sorry. the categories, for example, or tags, or how does one discover a vowel? Like, how do I even just browse vowels like by type or whatever else? Like, I'm just, how does that?
All the
Is that
social
something that?
networking
Yeah.
features.
Yeah,
Is that?
exactly. Yeah, right now you can just search for vowels. Like,
Okay.
it's like a Postgres I like query. That's as good as we've got for searching. We've been resisting going to like Elasticsearch just to reduce the complexity of things. But yeah, in my future, I built tagging systems before. Maybe I will again.
Yeah.
It's a feature that doesn't take long to develop, but to dispose of later, because you're like, I can't believe I built this again, and here I am with tags, 6 years later, and they're just
Yeah.
a mess. And you're like, why
Maybe-
did I ever do that?
Like, maybe is this an application for AI? Like, we don't actually build tags, but we ask like our AIs to tag things. I don't know.
Or you just you just have a model that's trained on like all the new vowels and incoming vowels, and then someone just like talks to a chatbot, and that's like
Right.
search of the future, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I want to do this kind of thing, and then the AI would be like, all right, like, well, we don't have anything that does exactly this, but if you combine these three vowels, you can do it, or here's one vowel, and then you just modify it, and so that could be a very useful
Yeah,
useful way
That-
of
that-
handling that.
totally. I think that's really programming of the future. You getting to use. So it's not only like will AI be writing code for you, but it won't actually be rewriting everything. It'll pull runnable bits of code from other people that have been like verified. So that's like part of what Valtan is doing. It's like like when I make a little helper utility, it's like a mini NPM package that comic usable snippet of code. So,
Do you expect people to ever have full-fledged systems? It sounds like you kind of did. That are all just like a bunch of vowels put together.
yeah.
Yeah?
That's the dream. That's the dream.
That's the
There's
dream.
a
So are
lot-
there
Yeah.
facilities in there to make that scalable and fast? I mean, I just feel like you're putting all your functions inside a Postgres database, right?
Yeah.
At the end of
Oh,
the day.
yeah.
And then you're like, sure, there's caching and warm up and stuff like that. But it's like, that could all run on one machine really fast, but we're going to run it on 75 machines across this network of vowels that you guys have a distributed network. It's kind of like the microservices thing over again at the
Yep.
function level. And so what are your thoughts on that?
A lot of challenges. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really hard to pull this off. Like, you could pick a number of different directions. Like, where my brain goes is, let's say you have 100 functions that represent your backend, and now you want to make a chain. Like, in a normal server, this would be a pull request where you'd have changes across them, and you'd make a branch, which is like a fork of all 100 functions. You get like a little
Right.
temporary a copy of this environment. You'd make, and then you'd have a pull request. Can we have like a change sets or like a pull request again or 100 vowels?
Right.
Like, I don't know. I hope so. Like, at the extreme, or like if I really succeed, I'm gonna have to build kind of like all of GitHub over again into Valtown.
Right.
And so you'll put like 100 vowels in a folder, and you'll hit like fork, and it will create a branch of that folder, clones all your vowels into a new environment. But what's nice about that is it's all in fork button. Boom, you have a deployed with its own name, like a preview branch. Then you go make your changes, and then now I do a pull request to a folder of vowels across 100.
Right.
Conceptually, it's possible. That's a sort of hopefully is a couple of rounds of VC funding away for me, so I can have like a whole team that can work on it.
Yeah, I think the real question is really just if you do succeed in that, is it called, or is it called like Val City, Val Metropolis,
Right.
Val Planet,
Val Planet.
like is there like
Val
are there going to be
Universe.
tiers? Yeah,
Val.planet.
Val
yeah.
Universe, yes,
Val Galaxy.
yeah, or you
Yeah.
just rebrand to Veta, Just kidding. I don't know if anybody got
Well,
the...
maybe if we take the Twitter analogy, sorry, the X analogy, and oh gosh,
God.
because you're inspired by that, and vowels are kind of your tweet, right? And then you have threads, and we talked about this a little bit, and I could see you threading together 5, 6,
Yeah.
maybe 7,
Sure.
but nobody writes a book, a novel,
On
and
Twitter.
publishes it on Twitter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe like that whole thing is just like, you know what, that is a different project, and maybe those two are simpatico and they play nice together, and every platform has to have its thing, and usually where you start is where you end, even though you may try to change it into something else. And so maybe it won't ever be that full-fledged application delivery platform, and maybe that's just okay. I mean, maybe the VCs don't think that's okay, and that's something Steve will have to wrestle with. But I think Valtown could be incredibly successful just by staying at in this micro world.
Space.
There's so much you can do with 5, 6, or 7 functions that are shareable and like just publicly deployed and this kind of stuff. So I can see where like that could be the dream, but maybe it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And it's a very clever API too. I just want to put that out there. Like, I really love the fact that like you can use
cool.
I'm like, wow, this is like a creative spin on like the power and the beauty of the web. Like, I love the like you can add parameters to the URL, in order to pass things into a val function. Like, that's pretty cool. If you want to do things fancier, there's like a whole express style API that you can use for more complex data. But I think it's pretty neat. So I agree with Jerod. Like, there's a lot of magic and productivity, and I think success in just keeping it simple. So
yeah. Yeah, we will for a while. Someone in the Discord came in yesterday and was like, "Can I abuse Valtown to like make it a whole backend for my mobile app?" And he like had a number of requirements that he wanted to know if we could scale to handle. And it was like, we want to try. We want to try. I guess that's what I hope success looks like, where people use us for small things. We're good at small, and then they abuse us for big things. And we can try to smooth out those rough edges over time.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't be possible. Maybe books will never be written on Twitter. Maybe whole backends will never be written on Valtown.
Well, I think you could probably do it. I mean, I don't know if there's a thread count limit on Twitter. I think you probably could publish a book on Twitter. Yeah. And I just don't think it's advisable. And maybe that's the case with Valtown. Like, yeah, you can do it. We made it technically possible. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And some companies are getting to that size. Maybe they're novellas, but it's just not advisable. Like, maybe you just need your own application delivery network for that. And, you could also scale the size of a val, perhaps, and I think that's kind of where we didn't get into your pricing yet. I think that's where it comes in. So, like, we talk about small functions. And I think 5 lines, 3 lines, 17 lines, right? But what if a val was a macro service, so to speak, in the analogy? And now you have these, like, in the case of a mobile app, you have endpoints. And maybe one val represents an endpoint. And that might not be a simple, small thing eventually. Maybe that's has its own little subroutines. And there's like an API that val publishes. I'm not sure how big that could get. But then you have basically each endpoint is a val, and that might have its own things and be bigger than we're thinking about it. Just an idea of a way of tackling the same thing. I don't think Valtown is too simple for endpoints for a mobile app. I think that makes conceptually, I think that's safe. But endpoints for Stripe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess it just is funny. Like, are we talking a company with 1 employee, 10 employees, 1,000 employees? It really
Each order of magnitude.
Yeah, I think if you're like be used by companies with 1,000 employees for their back end, sure, I that might be true. But like an 1,000-person company will use Valtown to like share snippets of code and to like explain their API. Like enterprises will use Valtown internally, will use Valtown to like show off their internally, or at least that's the dream.
Yeah.
Stripe is never going to move its architecture.
Well, I'm speaking like application scale. Yeah, totally. Well, speak to the pricing then. So in terms of scale, because at a certain point, I do start paying as a user, and of course, this is what keeps the lights on. So what's your plan there, and how does that work?
Yeah. So currently, we only have 1 plan. It's $10 a month, and it's flat rate. We let you run intervals more frequently. Right now, the limit on the free plan is you can run an interval every 15 minutes, and on the pro plan, it's every 1 minute. But we might be increasing or decreasing, depending on how you think about it, the limit on the pro plan to be once a second. We'll handle that. Mentioned how much persistence you can store in a val is like slightly different on each of the plans. What else? Like really soon, I think. So we just launched yesterday that you can email a val. So if my val is stevekrouse.foo, that's the name of the val, you can email stevekrouse.foo@valfund.email, and it will trigger the val, and it will pass in the parameters of that email as the first argument of the function of the val, which is cool. So it's like it pairs with console.email, which is how you'd email yourself from a val.
Right.
But one of our long features people have been asking for is they want email other people that are from Valtown, right. But we've resisted that because of email spam reasons. But we think we're going to open that up for pro users because it'll be easy to like detect that behavior and turn it off if our pro users,
right.
Because they're tied to a credit card and whatnot. So like little things like that, things that cost us money, things that are potential for abuse, we gate those behind the pro plan. And right now we don't want you to think of paying for compute or paying for more like things around the edges, like being able to email arbitrary people or run intervals all the freaking time. Over time, we're going to have to charge for compute if you want to do crazy amounts of compute. In theory, you should be able to do as much compute as you want on us, and we'll just kind of charge you for that proportionately. But we haven't reached that scale yet.
That's super neat. Yeah, I would say please just my only ask of you, Steve, is just like the sooner you can have a server that's not just based in Ohio, the better. Right? The internet is for everybody.
Right.
So if you have users in China, like let's get some servers in Asia, right? So like just that's my like that would be nice. But that being said, like I'm just curious, like it's been so insightful hearing you talk about this early stage product that's obviously gained quite a bit. I'm curious to kind of hear about the decisions behind your stack. You mentioned a little bit earlier that you're using Remix, especially for the front end. Like, I out of curiosity just did some stats. No, sorry, I'm going to start over. Out of curiosity, I went and looked up some statistics in the Chrome user report around like what frameworks were popular and what wild, etc. And Remix roughly 1,500 sites in the wild, and I was I jokingly made a comment to a friend of mine that I'm pretty sure like 1,200 of those 1,500 sites are like demo apps, but obviously I was just joking. So I'm just curious, like what was the decision behind kind of choosing Remix, and also just what decisions you were making like when evaluating your front end stack?
Sure, yeah. This really is more of a question for my co-founder, Tom McRae. He, again, we've been friends, I was like following him on the internet, and I just loved, like, he tries all the new JavaScript technologies and writes good reviews about them. And so he did a hard look at Next and Remix and maybe a couple others, but it was really between those two. And he went with Remix, which I was happy with. I've used Next in the past, and it's fine. It feels maybe a little heavier weight than Remix. Like Remix kind of fits more of our vibe of like web standardy kind of things, but
it's fast, faster.
Yeah, and like it's like a little bit less proprietary kind of a vibe, but I'm a huge fan of Vercel and Next. So depending on where these platforms, not be shocked if a year from now I came back and move to Next. that could definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing.
Well, I'm super excited about Valtown. We do have a couple questions coming in from our chat, by the way, JS Party listeners. If you're not in the changelog community Slack, why not? It's totally free. Head to jsparty.fm/community. Join there. Hang out with us. Talk while we record shows. Talk in between shows. Why not, right? So here's from Darcy Clark. Hey, we know Darcy Clark, don't we?
Yeah, we
He was just
do.
on the show a couple weeks ago with the NPM confusion. Is that what it's called? I love that term. If I got it right. So Darcy's been playing with Valtown, and he has a question. He says, is there a way today, or do you plan to support dynamic references? For example, today if I do @username.val and usernames in brackets, it doesn't work, so there's no way to export users or references. So I guess it would be with sharing purposes, like maybe you can't do that. Maybe you understand the question better than I do as the platform creator.
Totally, yeah. We don't support that now. So the reason we don't support that now is because of the like magical way that imports work today, which is part of why like moving to web standards will be so exciting and important of a project. So right now, we parse the code for all of your references. We bundle those references in before the code even starts to run. So that's why we currently don't allow dynamic imports, but in the future, like in the next month or two, dynamic.
Okay.
Whoa.
There you go, Darcy. It'll just work. Hang out for a month or two.
Yeah.
Like
Stay
import, like await import, and you can construct that string dynamically. So, like, I guess already you can do dynamic imports in Valtown. You can do imports in Valtown, and you can, if you can construct. Well, actually, we try to block dynamic string construction, but there are ways.
Okay. Well, if there are ways around it,
secret.
Darcy will find them because he is a security buff. And he likes to find ways around things. In fact, he has another question. Security things that maybe I'll ask in the post show, just in case.
I'm like, I have some security things too. I'm like, I have security questions. Well, I mean, this has been a burning question in general, but why don't we go with Darcy's second question first, actually?
Well, let's save that one for the post show because I don't want to necessarily. It if it's security.
Okay, that sounds
so
good.
Go ahead, Amal.
I don't.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I can just tell you whether it's sensitive or not if you wanted to ask, but I'll trust your judgment.
Sure. So are there future plans to sanitize secrets and values to protect users? It seems like it's pretty easy to expose those in vals today.
Yes. Oh, that's a great question.
He has some code that exposes a secret, so that's why I was going to just do it post-show, but go ahead.
Oh, I see. Well,
I won't
it's very
share
easy
the code.
Sure.
It's very easy, though.
If you ever create code that exposes your own secrets, you could delete code from Valtown, immediately. So, or you can, we'll make sure it's totally gone. Or if you see someone else expose a secret, just let us know. We'll remove that for them. But yes, we do have an idea, a couple ideas to protect you from like shooting yourself in the foot in this way, for sure. We have that we'll probably do in the next month or two is check on any output from Valtown. We'll just check it against all of your secrets, and if any of your secrets in the output, we'll just like redact it and send you a message. So that's that. Maybe we'll build on that and like do a secret detector, be like a random looking string. We'll say let us know if it's not a secret, and we'll show people what it is. So, anyways, there's a lot.
Hopefully AI. Hopefully you can use AI for that. I mean, quite frankly, you don't have to, but like definitely, I think that hopefully somebody open sources that in general, because I think that's a very useful thing, like a smart linter, one that isn't just using regex, right?
Right.
But my question is just kind of around, I know that like Cloudflare, for example, workers are all, they have very kind of tight execution contexts, everything's sandbox, but things are running on the same machine, right? Like from different companies, from different requests, etc. And so how you all have taken that consideration into your architecture, and what guarantees security here?
Yeah. So, so right now, most is coming from Dino, which that's like kind of their main value proposition, that it offers pretty tight security guarantees. But over time, we'll probably just keep wrapping things in containers to just doubly and triply secure you. I think that's kind of what people do. Like you create an enclave, then you create another, then you whatever. You create a number of things. What's the one, the Amazon? I always forget the name. Amazon's open sourced container runtime thing that they use internally. And, anyways, I'm sure someone listening. I'm sure most people listening.
Blazor, Razor,
no,
Phaser. Let's just call it Blazor. Move on.
AWS.
I don't think that's right, but
whatever. Yeah, we can move on. Yeah, there are. We right now we're doing pretty well. We just like in the history of the company, we have found had hackers, and it's been amazing. Like we have a really I think Valtown attracts the kind of person who loves to escape sandboxes, and so we have users who spend so much time, like all they're trying to do is like find save our sandbox. And so it gives me so much confidence in our platform because we have these brilliant people who have found all exploits, reported them, we've closed them, we've improved the security of the system to a point where we haven't gotten an exploit reported in months. So I'm feeling very, very secure about things these days.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and congrats on your product journey, and can't wait to see Valtown become city and metropolis and planet universe, eventually rebrand, obviously, because, just kidding. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, listener, the website, if we haven't said it enough times on the show, is val.town. Cool use of one of those new top-level domains. Check it out. Let us know what you think in the comments. We'd love to hear from you what you're building, and share the code that you build. Put some vals out there to the world. Come into our JS Party channel and share your vals with us, and we can collaborate on some cool public code. That is the show for this week. Steve, thanks once again for joining us. This has been awesome. Amal, thank you so much for co-piloting a real human with me today, not a GitHub co-pilot. And I can't avoid that joke anytime it comes across my radar, even though I've said it 17 times on the show. Okay, I'm going to hit this outro button before I keep talking more. Bye, y'all. It's been fun.
All right, so I have a bonus question that I want to ask.
Let's do it.
For Changelog++.
Changelog++. Steve, this is our membership program, the Super Insider Track. People who love our show so much they support us with their hard-earned cash. So we like to give them bonuses like this quick to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So Steve, you're kind of the envy of every developer who's tried to be successful with the dev tool, right? So many attempts at trying to be successful and make something. And here you are, like in the middle of I think. At the early part of your hockey stick, which is very great.
Lots of excitement.
Yeah, tons, super exciting to kind of actually to have this interview with you right here, right now. And so I'm just curious, what's this journey been like for you, and what do you think have been some of the biggest kind of aha moments from this? Both from protecting the API of Valtown, as well as just your own leadership, as someone who's kind of at the forefront of this project.
Yeah, great question. Let's see. I feel like I don't know if this is how you want me to answer. I feel kind of like I should start from way before this project because it's been a long journey for me to get here. Let's see. I worked at some startups, but then my first real entrepreneurial adventure was starting a code and building dev tools for that program, building developer tools for kids. So so anyone who wants, I would recommend kids is a cool audience to start with if that attracts. Getting to teach kids in person, or just teaching anyone in person, at a boot camp, kids, whatever. Being involved in developer tools and education at the same time, I think is a very powerful kind of way to start. there's just so much I learned from that. I guess making a developer tool and then getting someone to use it is invaluable because like you just get smacked in the face by like things you thought were obvious and close to obvious. And when you're like being paid to teach someone, you're in this like powerful position where you for them and like you're like, hey, let's try my dev tool out. Like it'll be easier. So you get that like tight feedback loop. A lot of people who make dev tools forget any people to ever try it because they make it and they just release it on the internet. But if you're in an educational context, it's a pretty tight feedback loop for making developer tools.
Oh, that sounds like such a good hack. I love that, by the way. Like, yeah, like get feedback from people who are learning that are going to ask all the right questions. And those are the questions you want kind of built into your API and built into your experience, just to kind of smooth over that. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. But hey, don't let me interrupt you. So go on.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So then, next adventure was the Future of Coding podcast, where I did a lot of research into this space. If you're sometimes I like joke that I was like a professional Brett Victor fanboy for a couple of years. I just like read his papers and his essays and I like kind of walked the tree. My other joke is that my career is a Brett for search. I started at Brett Victor and like explored the graph of references from Brett Victor. So Alan Kay and Seymour Papert and Mitch Resnick, kind of all those Xerox stuff. So I think it's really interesting because you can like follow those academic, and I was like writing an academic advisor. I was kind of academic track of thing, making a lot of prototypes. And it was a really wonderful time in my life. And I didn't do that on purpose. Like, so I was trying to just start a DevTools company 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I kept building prototypes that either hadn't worked a year ago or hadn't worked like 50 years ago. And so I just felt like I could save time instead of building 5 hours of building could save you 5 minutes of research or whatever. Right. Anyways, I switched gears from building to research mode. And I did that for a couple of years, and that was unbelievable. There are like so many pitfalls that I've seen other dev tools make that I just because I like a structured editor.
You learned from you walked carefully through the graveyard.
Yes.
You picked up the bone and you examined. You're like, how did you die? Oh, this is how. Right. Okay, got it. Okay, next. Avoid this. Yeah.
There are a lot of subtle decisions we made in Valtown that like aren't obvious at all, like that, but it's definitely informed. Like, yes, and like very careful considerations of seeing other people fail. So, like one of my projects was done for like this other DevTools company wanted me to like kind of review the space of DevTools and like present a new one every week, and so I did that for a couple of weeks, which was a great way to get paid to do research and review like the whole code catalog is what that was called. So you can look it up and see my reviews on all sorts of dev tools, which was valuable. So yeah, so work in education, then do like years of research, and then that's kind of my path. I was blogging and blog while you're doing it. So I was working on this like database as a service shoved into React. It's like my first venture. Well, that wasn't the original idea, but that's what it became. The original idea was like a Haskell web app, which didn't make any sense, obviously, but it took me a couple months to figure it out. But as I was going through that idea, I was like blogging every month about my progress, and I think what got the attention of my current investor, and it also got the attention of one of my co-founders. So I left that idea and joined a co-founder and DevTools startup. That also didn't work out. So I guess be comfortable with trying companies and like ending them quickly. Each of these experiments. And then yeah, so by that time I'd known my investor and he had this idea and I was ready to go. So that's town.
I don't like that answer. It sounds like it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm an overnight
overnight success. Yeah. 9-year, 20-year, 100-year overnight success, right? Yeah. Yeah, no. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That was very insightful. And yeah, best of luck. And can't wait to watch the growth of your project and have you back in a few months or a year and see what you've been up to. So thanks.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
All right. We will hit stop on our locals. We will say goodbye to our online audience. Thanks for hanging out in the JS Party channel and
Thank you,
chatting, y'all.
everybody.
This one will go live next week, so stay tuned for that. And we'll be live next Thursday, every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m.